Today, we are here with our hockey legend of officiating, Mr. Terry Gregson, who had a long-time career as an NHL referee and was the director of officiating for the NHL. Terry, thank you so much for being here with us today and for being a part of our Legends project for the National Federation.
Well, it's absolutely my pleasure, and anything I can help out with the Federation, because it's so key to the development of so many young people out there.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, and we're going to jump right in. So our first question for you today is, what role did interscholastic sports play in your life growing up?
Well, it certainly laid a strong foundation for me. I was born and raised on a farm, so I was from a rural community. My high school was 210 people complete. That was grade 9 to grade 13 in Canada. We had 5 years in high school. So it was a small school. And literally, we got to play every sport that there was. I mean, I was on the curling team, the badminton team, the volleyball team, the soccer team, the debating team, every team that was going. So it really gave us a wonderful foundation and, just across the board being an athlete. But more than that, our teachers were, our coaches and really close with us in the community. And quite often I would end up going to men's curling at night because I was a high school curler, and I'd be curling with my science teacher and things like that. So for me, it really gave me a strong sense of community. And it also gave me an opportunity to try many things to kind of find out where my passion and my strengths were. I wasn't channeled into one team at the age of 11, and that's what you're supposed to be. I mean, we played everything. And so for me, I think it really gave me a broad scope on not only on sport, but on life and how to deal with people and that strong sense of community.
What made you decide to become an official?
Well, that's kind of a interesting story. My father was the head of minor hockey in our community, and hockey on Saturday morning started at 5:30 in the morning because they had ice times. And when I was 13 years old, my father came one morning and woke me up and said, I can't get anybody to referee the 5:30 in the morning game. You're old enough now, you're doing it. So at the age of 13, I started refereeing the hockey games at 5:30, and then I'd play at 9 or 10 or whatever time my team would play. But that got me started doing kids hockey. And then when I stayed with it, I continued to play, but I also continued to officiate some other younger groups and things like that. Then I went off to university, and just to make a little extra money, I used to do some intramural refereeing. And then from there, it just stayed with me. And I went and played hockey in Europe for a year. And when I came back from Europe, I continued another year of university and then became a high school teacher. And when I came back from Europe, I knew my playing days were over. And I thought, well, you know what? I want to stay connected to this game because it's been a big part of my life and it's a passion for me. So I stepped up the officiating and stayed with it. And I guess the rest is kind of history.
So it sounds like you didn't decide to officiate, your dad decided for you.
Yeah, he decided for me. He got me so that I was an early riser. And then, once you got into it, though, I made some new friends and got to travel to some other little towns to do games. And I thought that was pretty cool. And I got to skate more, and I enjoyed skating. And so, but I always looked at officiating. For me, it was always just an avocation. It was just something for me to do. I never, ever focused on it becoming my professional career. And I think that's one of the reasons maybe I did make it, because I was a school teacher and I was doing this more as a hobby. And so I hadn't really put all my eggs in one basket. And so I could kind of do it with a free will. And then Fortunately, I was in right place at the right time, got scouted, and then was offered the opportunity to try it as a career. But I didn't want to put all my eggs in one basket, so I took a year's leave of absence from my teaching so that I could go back. But I ended up staying with it for my 38 years. So I didn't get back to teaching in the classroom, but I did a lot of teaching elsewhere.
You continue to do the teaching elsewhere. I know that for sure.
Yeah.
So, and you kind of touched on this in your last answer, but when did you realize that officiating was really something that you wanted to do for the rest of your life?
I would have to say it's after I got scouted, I got sent, I went to training camp, and then they signed me for 1 year, and I took that leave of absence. That's the year I really thought, you know what, I'd really like to pursue this, because it got to be, it was my only focus. It was my job. I woke up in the morning, I was, getting mentally prepared or physically prepared, and I really enjoyed that. And I thought, man, I never even thought of this before, but maybe this could become a career. And if it doesn't become a career, I thought, I've had a great experience of seeing what it's like to be your primary focus. And I'd like to just go back to amateur and high school stuff and be the best I can be there and do the big games at those levels. But I think it was probably partway through that year that I took the leave of absence and focused on officiating that I thought, okay, I'm going to take a real run at this and see how it works out.
What is your most memorable moment of your on-ice officiating career?
Well, that's a pretty easy one, because I had the opportunity to do Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals, New York Rangers against the Vancouver Canucks in 1994. The reason it's kind of special is in the modern era of hockey, which basically starts about 1967, this was only the third time there'd been a Game 7. And so that was pretty special. And I think it's also was special in the fact that the way it works with the National Hockey League is you're rated for the season. And so then there's the top officials for the season then get into the playoffs, and then you're rated for each round in the playoffs. And then when you get into the finals, there's only 3 referees and 4 linesmen get into the finals. And once you're in the finals, then you're rated there. So I got picked to do Game 7. So that meant, I guess, I was at the top of the heap for a moment anyway. And it was a special game for many reasons. If you're not a hockey historian, I understand that, but it was Vancouver, which is in Canada and on the West Coast. It was New York, which is in the States on the East Coast. New York hadn't won a Stanley Cup since 1954, so they'd gone a long time. Great players in the game like Mark Messier, and Mike Richter, and Trevor Linden, and just a lot of things. And it was in at Madison Square Gardens, which is quite an event center too. And so it was that was the sort of the pinnacle. There were a lot of other great moments, but if you ask me what my best on ice moment was, that was it.
That's too cool. And what's amazing to me is, as I've gone through these interviews, I'll ask that question and everybody can answer it without a hesitation, which is amazing when you've had such a robust career to be able to just have that recall of, oh, well, that's easy. So that's been a really cool experience for me, because I always think, well, they're going to have to really think about this one, but not so much. Everybody knows that memorable moment. So that's really cool.
Yeah, there's kind of just that moment where it all comes together for you. And I can remember standing at center ice, and it was just so loud. It was so loud, it was quiet almost, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And you kind of just looked up and thought, you know what? This is where I always wanted to be. And then away you go. And once you get going, it's just same old. You just keep that world outside the glass out there, and you just stay inside the glass.
Once the puck drops, it's business as usual.
Exactly.
That is so cool. So talked about on ice. So what's your most memorable experience as it relates to hockey officiating off of the ice?
That's a tougher question because I've had a lot of great experiences off ice, and I'm sure that's what the other people said to you as well. You know, for me, off the ice, I think the coolest experience is just being like so often just having 2 degrees of separation because of officiating. I was in Queenstown, New Zealand, walked into the hockey rink. I bump into a guy from Canada that knows my best friend, and I'm in New Zealand. I've been so many places in this world that, there's just 2 degrees of separation because of hockey and because of officiating. Other things off the ice, I've got to work with the Canadian Blind Hockey Association, and believe it or not, there is an incredible league for blind hockey players. They use special pucks with sound and all this kind of stuff, and we have special rules and horns. But just to work with these people, and they're so passionate about the game, and you get out there with them and you kind of think, boy, so what? I've got a sore knee. These people, basically they have rules. You can only have 10% vision. Goaltenders have to be completely blind. But that kind of experience is just so special. And just, I think off ice, it's the people I've met, the opportunity to have a bit of a platform to help out with charities like the Make-A-Wish program. When I was the president of the Officials Association, we got connected with the Children's Wish Foundation, and we raised money through golf tournaments and different things. Now the NHL Officials Association has the Zebra Cares program, and just interacting with some of these young people that have real challenges. I think those are pretty rewarding moments that officiating has allowed me to have.
What amazing opportunities. I'm so intrigued by the blind hockey league. That is amazing.
Yeah, they're having their national championships coming up at the end of March down in Toronto, and I'm going down to help out officiate it, and it's really something special. I mean, I tell people, if you walked into the arena and didn't know it was blind hockey, the first 2 or 3 minutes, you'd think it was just normal hockey, but they use it's a large puck made of metal with ball bearings in it. And it's really fascinating. They have a good website if you ever wanted to look at it. It's the Canadian Blind Hockey Association.
I definitely will. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So as we talk about in our office, the focus is recruitment and retention of officials, and training, education, and all of that. So if you were having a conversation with a newer official, excuse me, and that individual told you that they were going to quit, what would you tell that individual to keep him or her in the game?
First of all, I would ask why, because we need to get to the root of the problem. Is it lack of assignments? Is it lack of a sense of community in the group he's working in? And just try to find out why, because I think you have to get, it's like anything worth getting. There's a tough period you have to get through, and what you need is somebody to kind of help you through that. I mean, Dana, we've all had games, we've all had moments where we didn't necessarily make the best call. And, sometimes you needed somebody to lean on. Sometimes you needed to just go away and sort it out yourself. So I think this is where, mentoring and having that safety valve comes in to play, is that if someone says, I think I'm going to quit, find out why, and then discuss that, but also talk about your experiences that you've had. You've been in the officiating world for 25, 30, 35, 40 years. And to be quite honest, the point I'm at, I only remember the really good stuff. I don't remember the bad stuff. So there's lots of good stuff to remember. And so with a young person, I would probably want to find out the reason, then let's talk about it, and give back some of your good experiences so that there's maybe that opportunity that person can have those types of experiences as well. And that person maybe needs to have, you need to be the person to say, look, if you're having a little rough patch or you're thinking about packing it in again, give me a call again. Let's go out for a Diet Coke and a donut and have a talk or something. I think that's what happens. A lot of the people that are not really happy have nowhere to go to discuss why they're not happy. And, they're not going to go to the assigner and say, I'm upset because I'm not getting any games. They're not going to do that. You know that, and I know that, because it's just, now this guy, someone could perceive, oh, they're a troublemaker. Well, no, let's find out what the problem is and then go from there. Because, I can say, oh, I'm talking from a professional perspective, but there's a lot of great amateur people out there that can give them the message too, that be the best you can be at work. And if you have a passion for the sport, you know what? Don't give up that passion, because it's very, very important. Think of what you're doing. You're providing opportunity for so many people out there to play a game. And you know what? It is a game. I know sometimes it gets very serious, but at the end, it's a great outlet for physical activity. And I think it'll make you a better person at the end of the day.
And you kind of segued right into the next question. So that was easy. I loved that. So how important is it to have mentors as an official? And what words of wisdom do you have for individuals who serve in the role of mentor?
Well, mentors in my world were key. As I said, they got me through some rough patches, but they also gave me a sense of vision as to how to get to where I want to get to. My mentors were, first of all, my father. He was really involved in hockey, and he was one of those people in the community that people seem to always come to for logical advice. He was, so I think I got some of that logic, common sense gene that he had. Then I had when I decided to stop playing and start officiating, I was very fortunate. Where I was going to university, there was a man who was a teacher named Pat Haggerty, and I went to him one day and said, I'd like to take a run at this. He said, okay, I'll do everything I can to help you out. And he did. I moved from one jurisdiction to another. He contacted the person in the next jurisdiction, and Harry DeLine was his name, and he helped me out. And then when I finally got the opportunity to get into pro hockey, there was a gentleman named John McCauley. He was our boss at the time, but John really was a wonderful mentor, and he'd go to games with you, and you'd do a lot of talking in the car on the way home from the game, and it was all about, it wasn't about right or wrong. It was about looking at situations that were teaching moments, and how do we take that and incorporate that into your repertoire. So I'm always one, I believe as a mentor, you're there for support, not surveillance. That's the first thing. You're there for support. You're there to fine tune. You're there to inspire. If you're just there to report, here's what you need to do, but here's what you did wrong, that doesn't work. They need to look to you as a person who is going to help them grow. I have seen some people get matched up that really aren't the right matches either. You need to really match the proper mentor with the proper mentee. And if someone who is a good mentor, let's say on the black and white part of the officiating world, and someone else is a good mentor in the how we handle the gray of the officiating world, sometimes that person that's being mentored has to be handed off at a certain point so that growth can continue. So, it's, and the other thing I also I don't think enough groups look at, okay, let's say someone is starting to age out. Okay, they can't, like in the case of hockey, you can't keep up because your speed is diminishing, but as we used to always say, when our head finally catches up to our legs give out in hockey, so I think what they need to do is look, not everyone's a good mentor, but some people I feel, they start to age out and they feel, well, my value to the group isn't there anymore, but their value maybe just changes to the group. So I think you as the head of an association need to have a keen eye of who would be a good mentor, present them with the opportunity of being a mentor, and now they bring new value to the group. And it's, as I said earlier, it's not a job for everybody, but you do need mentors. And I would say I would never have made the growth or had the growth that I had without mentors. There's no question about that.
Me either. The mentors are everything. Though you just need to have that sounding board. Sometimes that's all it is. It's just somebody who will listen, who's walked a mile in those shoes or skated a mile in those skates in your case. But I think that it's so important for our growth and just for the relationships and officiating are everything. And I think that mentor-mentee relationship is at the top of that list.
And one other thing, then I think sometimes we say, okay, you become a mentor, but I think you need to bring the mentors together sometimes to discuss challenges that they're facing. I can't seem to get through to this, or I don't know how to approach this, so that they feel a little sense of community too. I'm not saying you're dictating to them how they do it, but sometimes mentors need people to talk to too, so that they can come up with new tricks and new ways of approaching. Don't just leave them out there drifting just because they were a good official for 35 years. Sometimes they need to be brought back so that they feel a valued part of the community as well.
That's a great point. So as you were officiating, what was a failure that you had in officiating that you look back at and realized that it actually helped you in the long run?
Well, it was I'll go back to one situation. I made a call in a playoff game that was not one of my better calls, and it really bothered me because it led to a winning goal. And I remember for 2 or 3 days I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to, and I felt like I really let everybody down. But then I realized that in this business, you're going to go through a lot of fix and fails to achieve what you want to do. And I think that particular call made me stronger, so that I was pursuing perfection, but I wasn't demanding perfection. I think before that, I was pushing on the edge of trying to be perfect. Well, guess what? It doesn't happen. And I think that really woke me up to, okay, I've got to be excellent. There's no question. And I've got to really, really be strong here. But if I have a slight hiccup, I can't let it stay with me. And you have to rationalize, okay, in this particular case, I was in bad position and I shouldn't have been. Maybe I was just lazy for a moment. So I think that moment in time probably made me a better official from that point on. So it's the type of thing that you're going to have your hiccups, but learn from your hiccups. Don't just set them aside. You learn from them, then set them aside and move on. And I think that it's interesting sometimes as a mentor, you talk to the mentee about some of your lesser than stellar moments, because then they realize that happened to you. Yeah, that happened to me. and this is what I had, this is how I had to deal with it. And so that's what I would have to say for me was that one particular night. It's a call that I made that I think I got a lot of growth out of it.
So what did you find the most rewarding about officiating, or what do you find the most rewarding about officiating?
When I was on the ice, I would have to say what I found most rewarding was just every night was a new challenge. There isn't a script, okay? It isn't act 1, act 2, act 3. It's like, okay, here we go. And I love the challenge of, in hockey, as you know, Dana, it's in a confined area. It's fast paced, lots of emotion. They're skating around with a weapon in their hand. There's a lot of stuff going on. And so the responsibility of taking all that and making it a competitive, fair, safe atmosphere is what I really found exciting. And when I came off the ice at the end of a game, was I always successful? No, not always, but for a large part of the time I was. But it was just that exhilaration of, being able to take the challenge and meeting the challenge. That's what then when I left the ice, I think my most rewarding thing was sort of the training and development of young officials. Looking at them and looking at okay, we have the physical side, but we also have the mental side. And I really enjoyed working on the mental side of officiating, like sort of those intangible things that you can't necessarily say you're supposed to be here and there and all that. It's like, okay, what did you see? And, reading, recognizing, reacting, and getting that thought process down so that it worked well. And I have to say, I always found the greatest compliment I could get was when someone 10 years after the fact would say, I remember when you told me. And I think, to me, as an official, you can't get any greater compliment, because, well, one of my favorite lines is, it's not important in life what you learn, but what you teach. And I think that's very important. And that's the part that I really enjoyed when I left the ice.
What would you say to the fan in the third row of a youth hockey game who's driving younger officials away?
Well, the old line, don't criticize one whose shoes you haven't walked in, is the first thing. But I'd have to say, to me, that's one of my greatest disappointments, is the way parents react in a competitive setting. I mean, they're not acting as role models at all. They're acting, I think sometimes the kids react better than the parents. So it's very, but what would I say to them? I would ask them if they've ever had the opportunity to officiate, and ask them, and if they say, no, I wouldn't do that, why wouldn't you do that? And then, okay, well, then why do you criticize if you're not willing to take up the mantle? It's, you're not going to get the opportunity to speak to these people in a rational, logical way if they're somebody that's attracted you to go over and tell them to be quiet. But I know there's a program that we have in Canada called Respect in Sport, and they have an officiating program now, which they're requiring a lot of the parents to take before the child can sign up for their sports program. And I've had and I happen, not that I'm promoting it, but I happen to be one of the voices on it. And I've had several parents go up and say, I never thought about it that way, because officiating is a very unique perspective. We're not worried about win or lose. We're worried about having a good, competitive, fair, safe game. And I've had a few parents say, you know, that I look at the game a little differently now. And so I guess if I had a parent in the third row and they were logical for 10 or 20 seconds, I would ask them to, you know, consider trying it, consider going to a meeting and hearing what these people, you know, put into it. Or I would also say to them, you know, it really is a very poor adult example to these younger children. I have to admit that my most disturbing moment came when I was doing a hockey game. I was in the NHL. One July, I got asked to go and do a minor hockey game for these two teams of 12-year-olds. I took pucks for the kids and everything, and the kids were having a great time. And the score was like 9-2, and I gave a penalty shot to the team that had 2 goals because I thought, come on, you know. Going off the ice, I had a mother berate me like I couldn't believe, and I never got berated like that in the National Hockey League in 1,500 hockey games. And it was very disturbing, and I'll never forget that. And it wasn't the kids, it was the parents. And I took a moment and I went and talked to that lady, but there was no talking to her. And actually her son was embarrassed by it. But so that parent in the third row, we need to somehow get to them. Somehow, I don't know how it is though. Maybe it's their way of venting their frustrations in life, but it's unfortunate and it's disturbing. And to me, that's one of the bigger disappointments in sport.
The program that you all have in Canada sounds amazing. One of the things that I hear a lot from officials is, you know, parents should have to take a class, and the fact that that is something that's going on, that sounds incredible. I've never heard of a program like that.
This is off the record. I'll send you a quick link about it.
Oh, that'd be great. And
Yeah,
we can
okay.
edit that part out. So no, that's awesome. I'd love to read about it because it sounds like a lot of what we've talked about and some of the problems that we face. So I definitely will check into that. Thank you for bringing that up.
It's what it's born out of is a young hockey player named Sheldon Kennedy was sexually abused by his coach 25 years ago. And he took up the mantle to develop safe sport. And out of that grew this whole thing. So that's what that's all about. Anyway.
Thank you for bringing that up. Now I have some stuff to look up. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
It's called respect. It's called respect in sport. And I'll send you the stuff.
I'll send it down as you were talking.
Yeah, I'll send it to you anyway.
Thank you. That's awesome. Okay, so but I digress. So if you could tell your younger self to do something differently, what would that be?
I would say enjoy the moments you're in. Sometimes I look back and I'll turn on the TV and I can't even relate to doing that job anymore. You know, you think I was so focused on the job that I didn't really take it all in. And so whether let's say you're doing a regional final or you're doing a state championship or something, enjoy the moment, you know, and the people you're with, because they're fleeting things. They become memories, but make sure that, you know, you took in what you could and enjoyed it. I think, you know, I got to do outdoor games. I got to do games in Japan and Russia and all over the place. I mean, they were great moments, but I look back and I think, yeah, I could have taken in a little bit more of that than I did, you know. So I think it's about when you're officiating, you have to stay in the present. So I guess I'm saying enjoy the moment when you get the opportunity to.
That is great advice, because I think sometimes we are so, like you said, we're so focused on the job that we don't really soak it in. And that's something I think we all need to do better at.
Yeah, I think, you know, when you walk out onto the floor and it's a full gym and everything, take a look around and say, you know what, this is pretty cool. I'm in charge of this, and here we go. You know, I think that, and then I think that heightens your awareness, because now, you know, you're ready for the challenge.
When did you realize that it was time to step off of the ice and retire?
Well, I always had a bit of a game plan. I'm big into succession or attrition planning, whatever you want to call it. And I knew that, you know, I had reached my peak. I was still a very valuable person on the ice, but I didn't want, as the saying goes, I didn't want to have them, you know, me walking out the door and the door hitting me in the butt. I wanted to walk out the door. And, you know, the odd time you'll get on, some player will say, you've been around a long time, you're getting too old for this job, you know, or whatever. It's kind of a joke at the start. And then eventually you start to you have to be true to yourself. Am I hanging on, or am I doing the game a service? And I went to my bosses 2 years before I wanted to walk out the door, and told them that, look, I think I'll only be around 2 more years. And they're kind of like, whoa, what are you doing? Why are you telling us when you're over? And I said, because I believe that, you know, I won't be as quick. The game's getting faster. And you know what? There were just getting to be so many changes that I wasn't sure I was ready to go through those changes again on the ice. And that's where you have to be true to yourself. Are you as energetic? Are you picking up the new challenges? Or is your value to the group going to be better in the teaching mode? And so I knew I was starting to slow down, because I started to get bumped into more often. And what's this all about? And then you realize, you watch a couple of tapes, you say, well, I'm not backward skating like I did. And so, you know, that's kind of, so what I did was, I told them when I was leaving, I left on my plan, which I was very pleased with. And then when I went into management, I set up a program for succession planning, and it's been very, very successful, because now what the guys get to do is actually celebrate their exit, as before the exit came as a surprise quite often, you know? And so it's something now that's accepted. We usually start discussing, you know, 3-4 years out, so that it goes from the subconscious to the conscious. And then we, as I said, it's usually a victory lap, and there's a celebration, and the person goes out with their head held high, not just getting a phone call and saying, sorry, we don't want you anymore. So I think what the bottom line to this whole thing is for the person to be true to themselves and say, when am I losing a step? When am I not reacting like I used to? When am I no longer as good a service to the game as I could be? And that's really what you have to, but being true to yourself sometimes takes discussion with other people.
And then the final question, and this is where you're going to help me with a little sales pitch. So
okay, here we go.
I know. So you have one opportunity to convince people to become officials. What do you tell them?
Well, first of all, there has to be a passion for the sport, or a sport, or any sport that you're, you know, you could be a baseball umpire and a lacrosse referee, whatever, it doesn't matter. But there needs to be that, first of all, that you enjoy the game. And then what needs to happen is that you really embrace the perspective of an official. And by that, I mean that you find satisfaction in judging fairness and judging safety, so that, you know, that is the goal you score, is when you judge things well. And if you have the passion, I think staying in the game gives you so many opportunities. And I think it immerses you in a really unique community too. When you go to the NASO summits or things like that, it's so fascinating to me to meet people from rodeo and volleyball and water polo, whatever, and the fellas that came up from Australia, from Australian rules football. The community is all one. It's everywhere. So I think that we as human beings like to be part of a team. And to me, one of the key things that we don't do enough of is build that team as officials. We have too many singular things out there. So I would say to a young person that, you know, you can be part of a great team, but it's up to your leaders to help with that. I just think there's a great sense of satisfaction. And I also think that it's a wonderful character builder. And I always used to tell young people, you think about this, you know, you diffuse emotional situations, you settle disputes, you control emotions, you have to know how to communicate, you have to have a presence. Aren't these things all pretty cool skills to have if you want to go out in the working world? So I think that if you have a passion for the sport and you can get reward from making sure that the game is played fair and safe, and you want to build character and become part of a community, that's why I would go into officiating.
Love it. Well, Terry, thank you so much for your time today on behalf of myself and the entire National Federation of State High School Associations, the hundreds of thousands of people who officiate high school sports. Your time, your wisdom, and your experience and guidance is very well valued by us. And I'm so appreciative for your time today. Thank you for everything you've done. And, you know, you're somebody I look up to as a professional mentor and role model as well. So thank you for your impact on my life and the life of everybody you've touched through your career as a hockey official.